You know, our president just gave an inauguration speech where he stated that we need to have a common sense revolution. And I would say that this would be one of those areas that I hope that reaches his desk. Because this is not only a matter of common sense, it's also a matter of due process. The very people who serve, bleed, and in many cases die for the rights of every other citizen are denied this basic right. The Second Amendment we're talking about. You can strip a veteran of their gun rights without basic due process. Why should veterans be punished for seeking help? We're not a substandard group of citizens. We deserve the same rights and the due process as any other citizen in America. My family has a long history of service. My grandfather was wounded in World War II. His brother was killed in Korea. My father was wounded twice in Vietnam. He died at 52 years of age of cancer related to Agent Orange. I served in 2 combat theaters of operation, wounded multiple times, and I gave you 2 of my sons to serve this country, and both of them served in combat. I urge this committee to act swiftly to correct these violations and restore trust in our system so that these veterans will actually seek help because they are worried about losing their rights or being stigmatized as being some kind of a crazy maniac that can't be trusted with a weapon when just a few months before, in some cases, they were patrolling the streets of Afghanistan and Iraq with grenades and rifles and everything else. We have to do better.
That was a powerful testimony from retired Captain McCormick, who stood up for our nation's almost 250,000 heroes who have been denied the same Second Amendment rights that they risked their lives to protect. If you didn't see the last video we posted, essentially thousands of veterans are being stripped their Second Amendment rights with no due process. These are veterans looking for help, dealing with their PTSD, and instead they are being betrayed and added to the NICS database, thereby blocking them from purchasing a firearm. The worst part is, veterans are trapped in a bureaucratic appeals process to get their name removed from the NICS database and reverse this injustice. But finally, Congress decided to put some light on the subject, and on January 24th, a Veterans Affairs Subcommittee held a hearing to discuss the dump of names into the NICS database and its consequences for countless veterans. Captain McCormick wasn't the only one who felt grossly mistreated by these unconstitutional acts.
In Vietnam, I was a combat medic on a helicopter. I've dealt with tragedy, trauma, and death for more than any human being should have. Under the VA fiduciary program, a veteran can be deemed mentally incompetent if it determines it cannot manage its financial programs. So does a millionaire be less threatening than a person of poverty? It's a gross injustice, and it's a bias against people of lower income. I came from a family of lower income. That's not their fault. I'm the oldest of 12 children. I grew up in poverty. I happened to achieve and was fortunate. I got my achievement because I was in the Army, and I went and used the GI Bill to finish my degree. Determination is almost often made without judicial oversight, without medical oversight.
The VA is supposed to be helping our veterans. We shouldn't have to police them to make sure they don't obstruct anybody's rights. For many veterans, it hadn't been that long since they were holding rifles to defend our country, yet now they're deemed unfit to defend even themselves.
It's very clear to me that VA's definition of mentally incompetent has nothing to do with mental health and everything to do with the simple fact that veterans need help balancing their checkbooks. It's a stigma to assume veterans are dangerous or suicidal simply because they have a mental illness. Every veteran with a mental illness deserves to be treated like an individual with individual needs. And we can't make sweeping policy changes based on harmful generalizations about disabled veterans, and policies must be based on real evidence. And the VA's fiduciary program fails to consider any evidence of dangerousness and fails to provide veterans with due process.
This stigma not only undermines veterans' dignity, but also creates unnecessary fear and isolation. These flawed assumptions should never be the basis for stripping constitutional rights. The worst part is, the VA fully admits that many of the veterans they report to the FBI do not have a condition severe enough to justify losing their gun rights. But despite this, some gun grabber groups, like Everytown for Gun Safety, argue that this reporting process is necessary to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals.
There's now a growing number of veterans the background check system knows nothing about, the exact cohort at risk. Congress should think twice before continuing to block the VA like this, or taking other steps to undermine this important tool. But I also want to address other access interventions. Like the continuum of force in the military, these are also a continuum. Some are about creating time and space between someone in a crisis and a gun, secure storage in and outside the home, or giving the keys to gun safes and lock boxes to someone else. Others are about preventing access, like state-level do not sell lists and extreme risk laws.
Everytown and similar groups use this false tone of compassion to pretend that they only care about helping people and have no ulterior motives. But here's the truth. Being a veteran, struggling with mental health, or needing some help with your finances does not make someone dangerous. And it certainly doesn't justify stripping away their rights. Everyone in that hearing knew this, but Representative Eli Crane was one of the few in the room willing to do something about it. So he stood up and said exactly what was needed to expose the VA.
Let's just get this straight right now. What is this hearing that we're having really about? It's really about whether or not unelected bureaucrats can strip away Second Amendment God-given rights from our veterans if they need help managing their finances or their assets. Is that correct? I think it is, all right? This is wrong in so many ways. And what I'm hearing my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say is that, well, we're concerned about veteran suicide, and so since most of them are committing suicide with firearms, we need to have measures and tools to, take those firearms away from them. That's what I'm hearing. What about civilians that are committing suicide and using firearms? Are we going to also argue in this body that they should have their firearms and their Second Amendment rights taken away from them? I looked up fiduciary, and here's a quick summary definition. Someone who is legally obligated to act solely in the best interest of another party managing their assets or affairs. There are many people I know, and I'm sure many of you know people out there that need help managing their assets or their affairs. I'm sorry, but I don't remember in the Constitution where it says if somebody needs help managing their assets or their affairs, that they should have their Second Amendment rights taken away from them. And when it comes to suicide, a lot of these individuals, a lot of veterans, and there's 4 of us on this panel right now that are not only veterans, but we're all from the special operations community who I think are against this will tell you this right now. Many of our veterans that are struggling with PTSD and have some of these issues that we're talking about here today, one of our biggest issues is fear and trauma because we thought we might lose our life or we lost our life in battle against other people with guns. If you want to increase veteran suicide, take some of these issues who are afraid, isolated, and alone and take away their ability to defend themselves. That's a really good way to actually increase what these guys say that they're trying to stop.
What Rep. Crane said speaks volumes. The VA does not establish that veterans are a threat to themselves or others before stripping away their rights. And being assigned a fiduciary does not mean someone is mentally incompetent, nor is there any data correlating it with increased risk of homicide or suicide. The VA cannot get away with this, and so the time to act is now. Every day that passes is another day those who have already sacrificed so much are betrayed. Here's what you can do to help our veterans. Sign the petition in the description that demands this program be ended immediately. Call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 to be connected to your congressman. Urge your rep to support legislative language that will stop the VA from trampling on veterans' rights. Insist that this language also includes retroactive removal of names already unjustly added. This isn't just about guns. It's about the erosion of due process. It's about the betrayal of trust. These veterans went to war to defend our Constitution, and now the same governments that they served is trampling on their rights. If the government is willing to do this to them, imagine what they do to us if given the similar opportunity. So please, call your representative, sign the petition, and fight for the courageous veterans who gave their all to protect our nation. Thank you for watching.